Hello, children of the corn. If your name is Malachi, I am sorry for you. That was not nice of your parents to do to you. I am Josh Bloom, and you can find me online there, too, at IamJoshBloom.com. How are you today? I am tempted to say, I don't care, before you answer. Don't get it twisted. This is a reference to a character on TikTok that I enjoy. I personally do care how you are doing, and hearing your answer keeps me from having to discuss how I am doing. This is a win-win if you actually want to talk about yourself and don't want me to talk about myself. Sometimes antisocial inclinations really can work out. This is the latest edition of the 1,461 Days of Ignoring with Josh Bloom podcast, the weekly compilation of my daily 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump administration posts that originate on TikTok and are then reposted on many other apps that are sort of hellish to keep organized, as I am sure you can imagine, or maybe not if you, unlike me, decided to stay far away from the smartphone-based ecosystem that is neither economical or systematic. Let's be honest, a smartphone is really just a hellscape contained in your pocket, but the upside is that you can see me everywhere for everything all the time, so I invite you to. Remember, IamJoshBloom.com. This podcast is officially titled 1,461 Days of Ignoring with Josh Bloom because I was sick of seeing my face next to his name. This seems obvious when you think about it, but it is a tagline I like to use. Thank you for indulging my instinct to market myself. In that spirit, please allow me to remind you to use your pocket hellscape to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast player and to encourage a friend to check out the show too. I am confident that they will appreciate hearing my musings on a semi-weekly basis, and if not, they will probably blame you, not me. I do not mean to turn this into a feature of the program, but I had another encounter this week with a fellow human American that left enough of an impression on me that I decided to fill time here on the podcast telling you about it. More than a decade ago, I used to weigh 360-something pounds, and because of having to adjust to carrying all of that weight for so long, my feet don't point straight. Now, most people's feet do not point perfectly straight, but mine shoot out to the left and right more considerably, and this is noticeable if you care to notice. When I was in McDonald's recently, waiting on my 2-for-1 Egg McMuffin modified with no butter to save 35 calories per sandwich, a little trick that people who have lost lots of weight use, a woman came up to me and asked, "Can I tell you something weird?" I said, okay, and she began to explain that if I tie my shoes differently, going through certain holes and looping the laces in certain ways, my feet will suddenly be straight. I was waiting anyway, so I just kept listening to her, and when she was done, I said, oh well, I actually have a condition. But she just kept on trying to tell me how to tie my shoes, and so I replied with a small lie. I said, this is how my podiatrist told me to do it, which is not actually accurate, but I do have expensive custom inserts in my shoes that were made for me, and I was instructed about not tying my shoes too tight. I thought that in itself seemed counterintuitive, but I listened, and now I also had a small lie to employ for the effort. This time, the woman looked annoyed and dejected when I said, this is how my podiatrist told me to do it because I left her no wiggle room. I suppose if she were also a podiatrist, she could have tried again, but she didn't, and my Egg McMuffins were ready anyway. I said thank you and left to eat in my car near the tree I like to park next to, and as I was doing that, I suddenly saw her standing across the street talking to someone and smoking a cigarette. Maybe she was telling them how to tie their shoes. I thought for a minute about telling her how to quit smoking, even though I never had to quit smoking, but as we have established, giving unsolicited advice without personal experience to back it up is not a factor. Don't forget, if you want to watch the daily posts that comprise this weekly podcast in real time, you can do so on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok if you're nasty. All of the links to my social media can be found at IamJoshBloom.com. You can also watch on Substack, the platform where all of my long-form writing lives, including the illustrated posts that accompany my main podcast named simply The Josh Bloom Podcast. Substack is a platform where writers can publish writing, which is then emailed as a newsletter to subscribers like you, so you have something to read when you really want to read something. So when you hear me say, subscribe to my Substack, that means go to superjews.substack.com, that's superjews.substack.com, and just enter your email address. Here we go. Subscribe to my Substack. I have a substantial article about Paul McCartney coming up that you will be able to immerse yourself in more fully by receiving it in your email before it gets published as a podcast. Sign up. Thank you so much. And now let's get into 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, days 362 through 368. This week on the show, on day 362, I talk about the leader of the Trump administration's ongoing fascination with the fictional character Dr. Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs, and how I believe Donald's decisions can be easily explained by accepting that he has one interest: serving his need to cause suffering and pain, just like his hero Hannibal. I also criticize reporters for not calling this out just so they can have something to talk about. On day 363, I wonder whether supporters of the leader of the Trump administration have ever considered the possibility that they are the marks of a con man. I bring up the twist at the end of the film The Sixth Sense as an analogy for how people sometimes only realize they are being deceived long after the fact. I am sorry if I am spoiling The Sixth Sense for anybody, but as far as spoiling the reveal at the end of the Trump administration, I think it is better to do that sooner than later. On day 364, I respond to a commenter who asks if I made similar rants about the previous administration. After correcting this commenter about whether what I do here qualifies as ranting, I explain that criticizing the administration is part of being a patriot, and that this particular administration deserves it more than any I have ever known. Of course, I probably shouldn't have taken this commenter's comment in good faith, but I needed the content. On day 365, I talk about how the price of my Trump tariff groceries and my Trump war of choice gas are negatively affecting my artist's lifestyle. I don't eat anything very good and I don't drive anywhere very interesting, but I am happy anyway, just like Steve Martin in the movie The Jerk, who seems thrilled to be living in the janitor's closet provided to him by his boss at the gas station. Stay away from the cans. He hates these cans. On day 366, I talk about the two former Doge Bros, the pack of kids hired to fire government workers in the name of cost cutting. As it turns out, no costs were cut, but these little dudes, while acknowledging this, do not show any concern at all for the lives they threw into chaos. I have said all along that the Trump administration is a gathering of people who enjoy creating hardship for other people. Luckily, this day also represents the completion of 25% of the 1,461 days. On day 367, I talk about how it is going to get worse before it gets better, and how we can concentrate on the getting better part. For a country founded in genocide and slavery, we're doing pretty well at progress, even if the stench lingers in the air, like whatever the dust around the Peanuts character Pigpen smells like. The supporters of the leader of the Trump administration will smell it too, and when they do, they will contribute to the eventual turnaround for all of us. On day 368, I talk about how the political divisiveness we hear about feels different from the reality I experience in my daily life among diverse groups of people. It is not like I don't believe the leader of the Trump administration isn't trying to divide us, because he likes people to be unhappy, but I also don't believe that we are so susceptible to suggestion that we are willing to be inconvenienced and annoyed when we're just trying to drink a cup of coffee. For your information, I am currently here at the P listening to the extended mix of the song Cities in Dust by Susie and the Banshees via my YouTube music account, which is my preferred streaming service since it is integrated with YouTube, which is my only remaining monthly subscription because I get a deal on the monthly fee as a Verizon customer. This brings us full circle back to the pocket hellscape I discussed earlier. I don't think we should have these companies and their associated sales speak as part of our consciousness, but I did it to make a point, okay? Good. Enjoy the next 20 minutes. I will not mention these organizations again. Day 362. 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. The leader of the Trump administration has been fascinated with the fictional character Dr. Hannibal Lecter for a long time. I think he admires him. I am starting to finally hear people say what I've been saying all along about the leader of the Trump administration. All speculation goes back to his behavioral issues. I don't understand why this has been unclear. Perhaps I am more curious about behavior than most. For me, all of the chaos caused by the Trump administration can be explained by the simple fact that the leader of the Trump administration is a bottomless pit of despair who must lash out at the world around him, and that is a never-ending pursuit. I think many journalists, reporters, and documentarians know this, but realize that if they just report it, then there will not be much more to say, and they need to have much more to say in order to continue to get paid for saying it. But it is noteworthy that some are now affirming my observations. In the simplest of terms, dude's just a fucking asshole. The war in Iran is notable as a way of pointing out what I am saying. Reports state that the supreme leader of Iran was killed in the strikes, and his son has now been named the new supreme leader. Reports also say his mother and wife were killed in the strikes. Do we actually believe that this person is now going to not do whatever he has to do to retaliate? I can't even imagine what an extremely provoked extremist is capable of. Here's more proof of this theory. As I have previously discussed, an elementary school in Iran was bombed by the United States and resulted in the deaths of some 150 children or more. Not only has the leader of the Trump administration not come out to say anything conciliatory about this, the closest he has come was to say once again words to the effect of, "Oh, that's war." I feel like what he really means is, "Oh, that's kind of cool," because that's what I think he gets off on. Yes, I believe, like his hero Hannibal, that he enjoys suffering. And when you are a person who enjoys suffering, that makes you a psychopath to me, and a psychopath should be treated like a societal aberration. You fly back to school now, little starling, and continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 363 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I often wonder if it has ever occurred to the followers of the leader of the Trump administration, has it ever been something they even just consider? That maybe he's a fraud. Maybe he is an incessant liar. Maybe he's a con man. Con men rely on their supporters believing their lies in order to perpetrate their frauds. Have his supporters ever wondered? I suppose if they did, they would have wandered. See what I did there? Has it ever just crossed their minds that maybe this is the case? That maybe con men need marks, and maybe I was one of those marks? It's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you're weak. Con men are experts at what they do. They know how to manipulate. They know how to lie with confidence. They know how to gain trust and exploit that trust. Con men look for marks who are good, smart, and strong to do their bidding. I want to make an analogy with a movie called The Sixth Sense, a film that blew people away because of a twist ending that no one saw coming. And if they said they saw it coming, they were lying. I bet the leader of the Trump administration would say he saw it coming. See what I did there? I'm sorry if you haven't seen it. I'm spoiling it for you. But after you find out that Bruce Willis was dead the whole time and you go back and watch the movie again, you're like, of course. How did I not see it? Now it makes complete sense. The analogy is that there will come a day when supporters of the leader of the Trump administration will suddenly realize, oh my God, I see it now. He was perpetrating a fraud the whole time. He was lying the whole time. He was conning me the whole time. When you go back, it becomes obvious. But until you do that, you don't know that the twist is coming. You trust the narrator and are completely invested in the story that you are being told. And in this case, the story that you are being told is not in a movie theater. It is in the theater of your mind. See what I did there? Just stirring my anticipation that sooner or later, and I hope it is sooner, you will ignore the Trump administration. Day 364 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. User DMK505 asks, what was your opinion of the previous administration? Similar rants? Well, first of all, DMK505, thank you for your comment. I want to address your premise first, which is that what I'm doing here is a rant. It is not a rant. I am not Chapel Roan confronting the paparazzi. I am simply reaching out to people who may be incredibly concerned, as I am, about the state of America under the leadership of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, and would like to hear a supportive voice encouraging mindfulness, optimism, and hope. Now, in that regard, you might have found yourself during the last administration feeling a similar way. You may have been looking for people to align with who also shared your concerns about the state of the country. I completely understand DMK 505, and with that in mind, I must say that I believe it is our obligation as patriotic Americans to be critical of all administrations. I personally believe that this particular administration, led by the leader of the Trump administration, is unique because it appears to me to be filled top down with people of immoral character, of questionable character, and of corrupt character. To me, this makes this administration stand alone in modern history as notably despicable, in my opinion. But like I said, DMK 505, you may very well have been sitting there 2 years ago thinking those very same thoughts to yourself about the previous administration. That is your right. And in fact, that right is what being a patriotic American is all about. And that right is what I believe is under threat by the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, who does not seem to want patriotic Americans to be able to disagree with their words, deeds, or policies. Again, DMK 505, I appreciate the comment, and I hope you understand more about my opinion of this administration as opposed to your opinion of the previous administration. I also hope you understand now that I am not ranting and that I have helped with this explanation. Have a great day and continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 365 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. On my way here today, I drove by the local gas station where I get my gas. The reason I go there is because I buy my Trump tariff groceries at the Stop and Shop, and my Stop and Shop is where I can accumulate points that give me a discount on gasoline. Well, I'm going to need that discount. I noticed that gasoline is now $3.89 a gallon for regular, and I don't drive a car that takes regular because I bought my car before I became a writer and was actually making some money. So my car requires the gas that is more than $3.89. Owing to what I just described about my lifestyle, I do not drive very much. I come over here to the Panera to make these videos and do my writing, and then I drive over to the local track to get some exercise, and then I drive the fuck back home. So that's about 10 miles a day, and I do that because I can't spend money, and I couldn't spend money when the gasoline wasn't even what it costs right now. Why is that? Well, it's the fault of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration. I almost need to pull into that gas station and meet the owner like Steve Martin does in the movie The Jerk. That's right, I need to meet Jackie Mason, aka Mr. Harry Hartunian, so he can give me a space to live in the back of the gas station instead of the co-op I live in now, which happens to be paid for because I used to have some money, but I still have to pay an HOA fee so they will plow the snow and clean the gutters. So, let me make this very clear. When I see these high gas prices, there is only one human being on the face of the planet to blame, and that is the leader of the Trump administration. We are in Iran for no reason other than he loves to make people suffer. On the day that an elementary school was reportedly bombed by the United States and dozens of school children died, the leader of the Trump administration was on a rally stage dancing. It was as if he was dancing on their graves, which I feel like he might enjoy because the man seems to get some kind of bizarre pleasure out of making other people's lives miserable and bringing about the most miserable aspect of life that one can experience, which is the end of life. When the price of gas finally goes down next year, it won't be because of a reduction in inflation. It will be because the world is ignoring the Trump administration. Day 366 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Two of the Doge Bros, part of Elon Musk's now disbanded cost-cutting goon squad, who remind me of Greg Marmalard, the villainous frat house president in Animal House, gave depositions recently. One of them was asked if he felt anything about the fact that so many people lost their jobs because of Doge. He said no, because it was more important to reduce the deficit, and then he immediately admitted that they did not reduce the deficit. The fact is, those jobs represent single-digit numbers in the federal budget. The reason this is relevant is that this result goes right back to the leader of the Trump administration. He enjoys making people suffer, and that was the actual point of Doge. It was not to reduce the deficit. He is spending more money than any president ever has. This wasn't about reducing the deficit. It was about making people suffer and making people feel pain. And as I have explained, everyone that the leader of the Trump administration gathers around him is mandated with that as their goal as well, whether they know it or not. He wants people around him that will also help him to inflict suffering and misery and pain on vulnerable people. And those Doge Bros did exactly that. So I guess they did their job. With today being day 366 of 1461, I am happy to point out that this day represents 25% completion of the 1461 days of ignoring Trump administration. We have survived through 25%, and I want to check in with you and see if you are remaining mindful and optimistic and hopeful like I am. I am doing just fine, and I hope you are too. We will get through the remaining 75% because that is what we do. I am asked time and time again through nasty comments that I usually delete how I could possibly be ignoring the Trump administration when I am making videos about the Trump administration. Obviously, these toxic commenters with their tiny equipment don't understand that this is a philosophical endeavor. It is about not letting the immense pressure that is being put on us compromise our happiness or keep us from living the life we want to live. Unlike the teenage Doge bros who don't realize the pain and suffering they've inflicted and will have to live with for the rest of their lives, we are not going to sacrifice our integrity in some weird display of professional desperation. We're doing great, and we're continuing to ignore the Trump administration. Day 367 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Welcome to the "it's going to get worse before it gets better" phase. As you know, here on 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, we concentrate on the better part of "it's going to get worse before it gets better," not the worst part. The worst part is inevitable. We created the inevitability of the worst part when we created this country. You cannot launch a country in genocide and slavery without there inevitably being a worse part when the people who caused the genocide and slavery were never fully held accountable for causing it. It will always linger in the air like the leader of the Trump administration's stench. And I say stench like that because when you say stench, what happens is you not only hear the word stench, you smell the word stench. And I want you to smell the word stench that is lingering in the air, because what does a stench do but linger before it clears? It inevitably dissipates, and if there is no new stench to replace it, then you no longer have stench. I think of Pigpen from the Peanuts gang, who mostly appears to be dirty, and I personally do not remember any of the fun, funny, and fantastical Peanuts sketches, strips, or series ever discussing Pigpen's body odor, but you do have to assume there was one. Now, I don't want to insinuate by any stretch of the imagination that Pigpen is a despicable human being like the leader of the Trump administration and the members of the Trump administration, because Pigpen seems like a nice boy. But I have to assume that the dust he kicked up was indicative of what might be going on if you could smell a cartoon. Like I was saying, it is going to get better. Just remember this. As, for instance, gas prices soar towards all-time highs, the supporters of the leader of the Trump administration will see that, and they will feel that. It will affect their lives, and they will say, hey, this smells. In fact, when I go to that gas pump and I see those numbers, I detect a stench. They will trace that stench right back to the leader of the Trump administration. So remember, it will get worse before it gets better, but we can tolerate it with a little bit of consideration of the situation. Hold your nose and ignore the Trump administration. Day 368 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. The divisiveness is propaganda. I never see it in the streets, and I live in a very diverse area. Most people who are aware of politics prefer to live and let live, and those who aren't aware of politics, when pushed, prefer to live and be left alone. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration promote divisiveness because that is a tool by which they can affect their agenda. But when I leave my house every day and come over here to the P, I am telling you that where I live, there are people of all races, colors, creeds, sexual orientations, and political persuasions, and no one seems to be in a bad mood. For the second time, don't get me wrong, I have heard political conversations in here and I have seen it get heated once or twice, but never to the point of distracting people from breaking bread. And frankly, some of them look like they might be going home to give some head. I had to say that because it's true. There is a lot of love in the room. I have met people here who are perfectly lovely and lovely to be around, and I know for a fact that some of them do not agree with me politically, and it does not matter because we value friendship over partisanship, and that is what I would like to see more of as we continue to get through these 1,461 days. That is what life is really about. It is also what I feel surviving the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration is really about. Like I said, most people who are politically aware prefer to live and let live, which reminds me of the song Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings, which obviously reminds me of the movie that the song was written for, which is Live and Let Die as well. It is one of the James Bond classics starring Roger Moore, a man I would trust with a gun much more than I would trust anyone in the Trump administration. When you're out in the streets, don't look for divisiveness. Look for fun. And while you're looking, don't forget to ignore the Trump administration. Hi, it's Josh. Still at the P, still listening to Susie and the Banshees. While I will not mention corporate monoliths as promised, I will mention Susie all the time. Many people do not know that for a while, Robert Smith of The Cure was also in this band at the same time. He's good like that. Like I said about divisiveness, while I do not see it in the streets, I also do not think that most of the people I run into here would be immediate fans of either of these bands. I feel like they would immediately react negatively to the hair. It's okay. More from me. Thanks again for listening. Please leave a 5-star rating for the 1,461 Days of Ignoring with Josh Bloom podcast in your podcast player, and leave a comment saying that you like the show. If you feel like leaving a comment about the leader of the Trump administration that says something like, "I can't wait to celebrate, and you know what I will be celebrating," you go right ahead and do that. Please tell a politically curious friend about the show, and while you are at it, please follow me on all of my social media by going to IamJoshBloom.com, where you will find the links that you are looking for. Lastly, if you would like to throw some support to me and the show, please subscribe to my Substack. Go to superjews.substack.com and just enter your email address. I would appreciate that immensely. A link is in the show notes. You can also buy me a coffee. For a mere $3, you will earn my undying gratitude, or at least enough gratitude to last until the next time I ask you to buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Josh Bloom. Before I go, let me remind you what this show is for. We are living in trying times that are trying to take our time away from living. The goal with this show, beyond pure entertainment, is to reclaim that time, regain our minds, and focus on what is important. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I am mindful, optimistic, and hopeful, and I am glad you are here with me. See you next time. Bye.